So first, the two statements that really resonate with me: pedagogy is the driver, technology is the accelerator. So that's something to keep in mind, that the technology is the means, the tools, but the main thing is the pedagogy. And also a very lovely quote from Le Petit Prince: "On ne connaît que les choses que l'on apprivoise." So we want to basically, sometimes Moodle is like a monster, and we want to tame it. Basically, we want to tame it for everyone. All right. So the objectives here would be, we wanna see how we can make Moodle more accessible, more diversified for the students, for better engagement and greater motivation and greater autonomy, and also efficiency gain. So I'm an economist. As an economist, I'm obsessed with efficiency, right? That's pretty much the only thing that matters to me. So I have to say that Moodle is far from being efficient, but compared to other alternatives that I've tried, this is the best option that I found. Right, so I'm going to show you a few tips that will help you make your course also more efficient. By the way, so before we start doing it, I want to show you some of my end products. So when my students, this is my student account, when my students go on Moodle, this is what they see. This is from winter courses, the course that I thought it was a complimentary course. And when they sign in, what they see is something like this, which is probably not exactly the same as what your students see when they sign into your course, right? So we had a Zoom link, we had a Google Drive. I just want you to notice a few things here. First of all, notice that there is a random glossary up here with an image of an economic concept. There is a checklist overview with these bars showing the progress of the student. There is a calendar. Now in the calendar, there isn't anything because the due dates are over. But if you go back to maybe May or April, then you see activities that are due. And then we have upcoming events. Again, back then there was nothing due. Right, I mean, right now there's nothing due, but back then something would show up here. And this is my student account, by the way, right? A more current course that I'm teaching right now is similar. Again, we have a concept, you have efficiency, we have a checklist overview, and we have upcoming events, which is what's coming up next week for them. Right. So these are some of the things that we are going to try to put in your course, which really enhance the experience of your students. All right. There is also, when teachers look at my course, they're like, "Oh, how do you do that? Show me how to do it." Sometimes that refers to what I would call fluff, and sometimes it refers to the meat. Right. So that's the distinction I put here. We have the meat, which is more like the pedagogy, and then there's the fluff, which is all the beautiful stuff. We're gonna do both. I mean, as an excuse to give you fluff, I'm also going to give you some meat. All right, but first of all, before we do anything, I want to point out a few important things. One of these is this idea of ease in gradually. Moodle has a lot of capacities. Don't overdose yourself. Okay, don't overdose yourself. Like putting up all of the possible makeup that a teenager can put on, right? So just keep that in mind. Go gradually. Every term, try one or two features, and by the end of a couple of years, you're going to have a complete course. Another thing is this idea of technophobia. Basically, you have jumped through a lot of hoops to get to where you are right now. Mastering Moodle is not beyond your abilities, right? So I think that also is an important thing, that it's not a lack of competence. Often it's more lack of confidence, and also maybe lack of time. Another thing that I want to suggest to all of you as you become advanced users is try to get a student account. It's common for teachers to use the switch role to student in order to see how things look from the student end. That's pretty effective, but at some point you really want to have an actual student account, and you can do that by sending a message to the help desk and asking to create one for you with your non-Dawson email, right? So that would be another tip for future to keep in mind. One more thing, this is kind of important, is about merging sections. So as a general rule, what I would say is that if you have multiple sections, then merge the sections. All right. Unless there is some other, so I notice some of you have considerations about perusal. I know I think in perusal you can create subgroups, right? But that's a different thing. So I don't want to get sidetracked into that. But as a general rule, try to merge sections. It's going to save you a lot of time. You don't need to duplicate everything. And another thing is that don't even duplicate activities in the sections. Instead of that, so basically I'm giving you some screenshots here to show you how to do multiple groups. This works both for the gradebook and also for the activities. And what you can do later is you can do group overrides, or you can do the filtering through restrict access, right? So that's gonna be the way to do it. Another thing is some students, by the way, I receive a lot of surveys from students about their experience with Moodle. A common kind of mistake that I've heard is that sometimes the teachers do merge the sections, which is good, but then what happens is that they have multiple versions of a document, each for one section, and they don't hide it. So that has a very easy fix. If you have multiple sections, there's an eye icon. Just cross out the eye next to your section. Rafael, do you want to say something?
Yeah, just a quick comment on merging sections in Moodle. We strongly recommend you, if you want to merge before you add any content to the course. If you start adding content and then, oh, now I want to merge, there's going to be a glitch and the merging is script, and then you need to contact Mark to fix that. So,
absolutely. Yeah.
So this is the first thing. And the second thing, like if you merge it, like let's say a course, and then you decide to unmerge, there's no way a teacher can unmerge a course by himself or herself. So in this case, if you want to unmerge, you need to contact Mark, and Mark will unmerge the course for you if there's a need for this.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Merging should be the very, very first thing that you do, right? I have it here. Merge them before anything else at the beginning of the term. So that's something to do. Another thing that you want to do at the very beginning of the term is setting up your gradebook. I know the Moodle gradebook is not as neat as Leah, but it works. And the way to make it efficient is to set up your gradebook at the very beginning of the term. All right. Duplicating. Another thing is one of the ways to be efficient with Moodle. If you make questions, for instance, questions or quizzes or assignments, a lot of times we have similar patterns that repeat over the questions or activities. So a very smart way is to spend more time at the very beginning to make your first question or to make your first activity, and then duplicate that for the further activities along the term. So let's say if you have 3 assignments or 3 quizzes or whatever, do a good job setting up the first one with all the feedback, with all the instructions, with all the conditions, set that up, and then you duplicate. When you duplicate, everything gets duplicated and you don't have to redo anything, right? So the first thing that you do in every activity, try to pay a little bit more attention to that. That's going to serve as a template for that. All right, another thing that's super important is some of the things that I'm going to show you really require you to model it for your students. So modeling means you demonstrate to them how they should do each activity, right? And I've put some links in this document which shows you examples of modeling. So for instance, if you use perusal, show your students how they should do it. And I would suggest make a short video where you show them how exactly, what are your expectations, what they should do, how many posts, how many annotations, and what kind of quality is acceptable, what kind of quality is not acceptable. And the same goes with the glossary and the forum, as I'm going to show you later. So that's going to be important. If you model it properly for them, then they're going to be more autonomous and they're going to create quality posts for you. All right. Again, another thing, this is just before jumping into things, is try to stay in-house. Try to have only one platform where you put everything. Sometimes teachers merge or try to use Moodle as well as other platforms like Leia or Teams or something else like a publisher's website. I don't think that should be our first option unless it's absolutely necessary. You could embed Moodle into Teams, so that's fine. But as a general rule, I would say that Moodle usually has enough capacities to do whatever you want to do in-house, right? Or you can do some of those plugins like Turnitin, Perusal, My Daylight. Those things are external, but they embed into Moodle, so the students don't have to sign in separately, right? So also something to keep in mind. And then the gradebook, I also told you, I made a video about how to make the gradebook, but watch it later. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the needs. So we're gonna do something together. So here's where we're gonna start doing actually something with the course. So I want you to go to your course, the blank course that you open, and go to edit settings. So I'm gonna demonstrate it for you, and you can, by the way, if you find the file distracting, you can just follow my demonstration. So if you click on the gear icon on the top right and you click on edit settings, that's where you get it. And you can click on expand all. So the groups that I mentioned before, this would be separate groups. If you have multiple sections, enable that. And then completion tracking is what we are gonna enable here. So you would say enable completion tracking, it should be yes. And then you save and display. All right, so I'm gonna show you why this is super important, and I put it as the first item in my list. So the next thing is we wanna create a checkbox, a checklist. So under topic 1, where it says add an activity or resource, click on that, and then choose the checklist. Now for the name of it, I would call it, let's say, week 1 checklist, or whatever name that you want, it's not that important. And then you can expand all. So if you scroll down, it says updates by, select teacher only. Teacher can add comment, add due dates to calendar, yes. And show course modules in checklist. This is gonna be important. So when it says show course modules in checklist, click on current section. And you don't need to worry about the rest.
Sorry, what are we adding? What?
It's a checklist activity.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that a resource? It's an activity.
It's called an activity, or it's an activity.
I see
believe.
it.
Yeah.
Check. Okay.
And it's number 2. Yeah, it's good. I'm gonna tell you then it's number 2 in the. Sorry, it's number 10. It's number 10 in the document that I sent you. So save and return to course. So now you have a week 1 checklist. So we're gonna keep it for the time being. So, and the next thing I want to do is to add a block. Okay, so the add a block would be on your right, and you click on add, and you select the checklist option. So you add that block. All right, so you should have a checklist block, which is now empty on the top right. And we're going to click on configure the gear. Click on the gear and it says configure checklist block. So click on that. And then the important thing here is when it's a checklist overview, you want to say yes. And for the rest of it, the rest of it is about where it appears. You can play around with this later. We don't have to worry about it at this point. So you click on save changes, and your week 1 checklist appears up here. Now the students would actually see a bar which would show their progression, and that's super useful. Based on the feedback I'm getting from my students, this is the most useful feature of Moodle, because when they log in, let me just show you my student account. When they log in, this is in their face. They see that how much they have done and how much they haven't done. If one of the bars is not complete, they would know immediately that something is missing. This is the closest approximation to a notification that they get on Omnibox, right? So one of the main problems of Moodle is that it doesn't give the same amount of notification as Omnibox, but the checklist progression bar comes close to it. All right.
You have the little green bars. Do we have to, does Moodle do it automatically? Like if we have a lab due, I don't know, on week 1, and then they complete it and let's say the teacher grades it, then does it automatically, like, is the bar filled out, or how does it work?
Right, that's a good point. So this is my end and not the student's end. So let's say if I look at week 11 checklist, I could go to edit checklist, and it shows the activities that are included in the checklist. And I could hide something if I want. So anything in this block of April 19 to 22nd, all of these are now showing up in the checklist, right? So you could also manually add things if you want. So you can say that I have done the reading. You can do that. You can add it here, and they would manually check that off themselves. Does that answer your question?
Well, otherwise it's automatic. Like as soon as
it's automatic, exactly right. So the other activities have. So we're going to look at that. The other activities have a condition. When the condition is met, it automatically gives them this check mark, right? So if I go back to my student account, you see here for some of the things I can manually give myself a check mark, but for the other ones I cannot click here, right? So if it's not a solid box, I only get the check when I have actually done the reading. I only get the check when I have actually done the H5P activity, for instance, whenever I have the grade for it, or when I have done the quiz for it, right? So once they get the check, it will update in the week 1 checklist, and it will show up here in the bar. All right. So by the way, I have quick instructional video. If you had any problem with the last 2 parts, I have a 2-minute video which really walks you through. So again, you can watch that later. Let's look at the glossary, which is the image that you saw on the top of my page. So we're gonna create a glossary activity. So go back to your course. Under topic 1, click on add an activity or resource, and then select the glossary. So the glossary would be here. And again, give it a name. I would call it illustrated glossary because I make them draw things just to suffer a bit more. But you can call it any glossary. And we want to check some of the options here. Something that's super important is this thing, allow comments on entries under entries. Choose yes for it. This will enable students to write commentaries on each glossary item. And then you can require them to write commentaries so that they can digest the material more. Under display format, I would go with full without author. I'm a big fan of anonymous posting. When I use Perusal, I do anonymous posting. When I use the forum and anything that I can do anonymous, I let them do anonymous. And I've got some positive feedback from students, which it reduces the stress of being on display. You as a teacher can see them still, but other students can't see them. So I would choose full without author. And then I would go with 100 just so that everything is on one page, but that's not a major issue. And you can ignore the rest and scroll down a little bit to ratings, where it says aggregate type. Click on maximum rating. Now this is your choice. You could also go with average ratings, but if you want to be generous, give them maximum. And instead of the point, use scale and try the like option. Again, this is up to you. You can have points, you can have scales, you can have, from 1 to 5. That's up to you, but I will try the like option. If you have set your gradebook, you would also choose your category, but here we don't have any categories. So ideally you would have categories and you would decide that right here. And you can have a grade to pass, but again here, this would be like and not like would be 0, 1. So we're not gonna use that. So some of you asked how we know that the student has completed an activity. This is how we know. So in the activity completion, you can have the students marking themselves manually, which is they just click on the box, or you can set it as when the conditions are met. Okay, so let's choose that. This is not in the document, by the way, but I have other similar ones. So the students must view the activity to get the check mark. So they should open it. You could require a grade. So I usually use that for perusal, for H5P, and for quizzes. For the glossary, you can also do it, but I wouldn't, because then the grade here comes from their peers, and maybe they are not rated yet. But also check this thing. Students must create at least one entry. So they should create at least one item in the glossary. So have these two check marks. And then save and return to course. We're gonna also enable the ratings to, if you go to illustrated glossary, just open the activity which you just created.
Excuse me, I have a question. Why
Yes,
the
go ahead.
check mark for illustrated glossary is like dashed?
So right, yeah, exactly. So for the first one, which is the week one checklist, this is a solid line because they can manually click on it. Ideally, actually, you shouldn't do that either. So ideally, you would go back and apply what we did in the illustrated glossary in the same way to the week one checklist. But whenever it's dashed, it means that the students cannot give themselves the check mark. They should actually complete the activity in order to get it. So open your glossary and click on permissions on the right side. This is one of those areas which gets a little bit more advanced, but it's worthwhile. It's really worthwhile for your students to take this extra step. All right, here, if you scroll down, you're gonna see rate entries. And you can also press Control F or Command F and search for rate entries. Now here it says that these are the people who can rate the glossary items, the non-editing teacher or the teacher. And we're gonna click on the plus and choose student. So we're gonna enable students to rate each other. Once you've done that, then you're good. You can go back.
And where do you ensure that students cannot see? Where is it exactly? Sorry to ask you that.
Cannot see what?
What the so they are going to evaluate the entries of other students, right?
Yeah.
So, and you want this to remain anonymous, right?
The rating, yeah, the person who has rated remains anonymous among themselves. Yes.
Exactly. So where is that?
That's already built in. You don't need.
Oh, it's
to
already
say,
built
yeah,
in. You don't need to specify anything. You don't.
No.
Okay.
Not for the ratings. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. All right. So let's go back to our main page, and we're gonna do another ad block. So go to the ad block drop down and scroll down to random glossary. Random glossary entry. So click on that. And by the way, here we are moving on to page 11 of the document. So you should get a random glossary entry block, just like the first one that you had. And again, click on the gear icon and click on configure random glossary entry block. It should already have the one that the only glossary in your course. If you have more than one glossary, then you would have to specify this. So as long as this is the glossary that you made, you're good. You don't need to worry about anything else, and you can just save changes. So that also sets up your glossary. Again, once students actually post things in there, when they sign into your course, what they see here is something that's pulled out of the glossary randomly. And if they refresh their page, they see another concept. This really makes them feel at home. When they come in, there is an image there that one of themselves made it. And the way I do the glossary is that I require them to write comments on each other's work. So if I go to the illustrated glossary here, I have a little video a little tutorial. This is the modeling, and I have put the link for you there, where I show them how to post it and also how to do the commentary. So here we have, for instance, the balloon effect. Some of these, by the way, are really artistic students. The commerce profile guys, they just do stick figures, but this was the special course. And then they have comments, so they actually comment on each other on how the drawing represents the given concept, right? So this is super useful, guys, for practically any course. And if you feel like your course is too abstract, if you think like your concepts are too abstract, then think again, because economics isn't that compatible with visual representation either. So for instance, if you many of you teach languages, English or French or Spanish, in languages you can do a lot of that things, like how do you give a visual representation of the passive voice, for instance, or give a visual representation of an oxymoron. Or if you have a reading, select a certain scene from the play or from the novel and give it a visual representation. So the way I do it is that I assign to them a certain concept that they should draw. So together as a class, we compile a complete glossary of economic terms. You can do this literally with any other course. In some science courses, it's obvious you can have a lot of visual representation. But even if you teach something like math, you can have a visual representation of the determinant or L'Hopital's rule, or whatever it is. Like, and the thing is, maybe you're teaching French and you're like, okay, how can I have them do complement direct or indirect in French? But the thing is, you don't need to know that. That's their problem. They are creative enough to do that. Just give them the freedom and assure them that they're not being judged. And that's one of the things that I put in the modeling. In the rating section, I tell them, guys, if it's thoughtful, if it's meaningful, just give them a like, give them a full grade. So they are not being judged. It's just an opportunity for them to have hands-on experience with some concept. All right. So where are we? I think we did all of that. And again, here I have a video that I share with my students about how to do the glossary. You have to get going, by the way. All right, let's do the open forum. This is also one of the highlights, one of my most recent discoveries. I really want you guys to appreciate. So let's create another activity called the open forum. So again, under topic 1, add an activity or resource and choose the open forum. So that would be the purple icon. Give it a name. Let's say, I don't know, week 1 forum or whatever it is. And I would choose the Q&A forum. The advantage of the Q&A is that they don't get to see other people's posts unless they post themselves. So they really have to digest the material first. Then also, I would select all of these things, especially anonymous posting. Again, I'm a big fan of anonymous posting. You can always retrieve who said what if you want. And you don't need to worry about the grading because the grading is going to be automatic. And I'm going to show you how that works. Scroll down a little bit. And under subscription, I would disable it, because the thing is, they would receive an email, and you might receive an email every time if somebody posts something. That can be really spam, especially if they use it a lot. But although they have their Dawson account tied to it, and a lot of them don't really check their Dawson account. All right, under the grade, select rating, and you can keep point, and let's say you can have it out of 5. This is super important, guys. I want you to pay attention here. What you're doing effectively here is you're enabling themselves to peer evaluate. All right, so you don't need to go after them to read every single post and give them a grade. This is going to be an autopilot. You're putting your course on cruise control. You give them instructions, and they're going to grade. They're going to do your grading load, basically. And then for the aggregate type, I would say average of ratings. You can again say maximum if you want. If it's a little bit more substantial and you want to give them incentive, you can put average of ratings. And then for activity completion, again, we're gonna make show activity as complete when the conditions are met. And you specify how many posts they need to have. So I usually give them more than one. One would be something that they post. I would say 3. You post one, and then you have to comment on 2 other posts by other students. But again, this is up to you how much you want to put in here. I wouldn't play around with the rest. So you can open your forum. For this kind of forum, which is the Q&A forum, you need to initiate the discussion. So add a new discussion. And what you can do is, what I would say, again, this is not in the file, so maybe you just pay attention to my demonstration here. Click on Use Advanced Editor down here and additional options. So this gives you a full editor. And here you can say question. And I would say write a difficult exam question from this week's lesson. Whatever it is, give your instructions here. Give them full instructions. If you want to have a video modeling, also you can put it there. If you want to have links, you can have it here. This is also the same interface that your students see. So in the forum, you can also have images. You can have students upload an image. They can click on the image and upload, or they can upload. They can put links in there, or they can upload their voice. They can do voice recording. So again, those of you who teach language courses, the forum has a lot of potential. You can have them record themselves and then listen to each other's recording and comment on how it can be improved. So ideally, you would like to meet every student and go through their oral skills, but sometimes we can't afford that. We don't have the time for it. So what you can do with the forum is you can have them do peer evaluation. There's the option of revealing yourself in the post. I mean, like, as a teacher, I guess you would reveal yourself. And I would also disable the notifications, and you can post to forum. So what happens with this is that the students can see this and they can post under it, and then they can also rate each other. So, but let me just show you the end result of that. So this is again from the same course. So, but legalizing whatever, legalizing organ transplants. What happens is that you see the rate, and I have put in scales. I'm going to show you how to do these scales also. But you could have 1 to 5 also, and you can give them, you know, a plus, for instance, or they would rate each other. Another thing is that Moodle by default does this cross-referencing. So these things, by the way, are linked to the glossary. So this was one of the images that we saw. So this is very useful. It's multiple means of representation when the students are reading. If they don't remember a certain concept, like, oh, what was the market? This is linked to actually another lesson in the course, so they can look at what does this should refer to? How is that important? Well, that's the normative statement and so forth, right? So these are automatically built into Moodle's filter option, and again, this enhances their learning experience. One thing about the forum is I've talked to many teachers, and they don't always have a positive experience with the forum. One reason is I think they make the forum too long, which can be painful for the students and for the teacher. What I do with the forum is I make the posts very short. I ask them to post only 1 or 2 sentences, but make it advanced. So like a difficult test question. So they have to come up with, like this one, for instance, is a very good test question. They have to come up with a difficult test question, and then they answer each other. So for these other ones, they're actually answering each other's questions. So that's how it would work with the forum. All right. So I'm gonna skip the rubric. I don't know. Wow, time is flying. My experience is that for major assignments, a rubric can really help, and it's also a great way of giving feedback to your students. It also makes it more equitable when you grade. You know, things are very clear on how it goes. So for instance, here what I have is a rubric that I set up. Again, I go with plus check question mark with the different aspects of the paper. You can also write on the file if you want, and that does Moodle does the calculations for them, right? So that's how the the rubric would work in this case. But I'm gonna skip the rubric, but it's there for you to watch it on how to create a good rubric. Another thing, again, I'm gonna skip this part also, is the bulk grading. If you want to give a lot of feedback, which is usually common between students. So sometimes what happens is that we have common mistakes and we feel like we are repeating ourselves on the feedback. What you could do to save time is to use the offline grading worksheet, right? So again, I've given full screenshots and examples on how that works, but basically you would get to download an Excel sheet and you can put in all of your feedback in there. You can copy paste as much as you want, and then you upload your feedback file directly into Moodle. That's going to save you a lot of time. This is useful. I would say this is useful for whenever you feel like you're repeating yourself, but especially for low stake activities. For the high stake activities, I would use a rubric. And also another thing is that you cannot use both the rubric and the offline grading worksheet. I think it's obvious because the rubric is not compatible with the breakdowns. But anyway, another thing, again, I'm gonna skip this for the interest of time, is the workflow. These are some of the more advanced things. If you're grading a paper where you take, let's say, 1 week or 2 weeks to do it, and you don't want some students to see the results before others, what you can do is you can use the workflow where you keep things cache, everything is hidden, and once you're done, then you release them. Again, I put screenshots, everything. It tells you how to do the release once you're done with the grading. So that's kind of like, just to be fair to everyone. All right. The next item is blind grading. So I'm going to actually stop that. Let's do another poll. Do you think it's likely that you have unconscious biases when grading papers? About 65% is quite likely, 35% not likely. To be honest, I was in the not very likely team until I started doing blind grading. It's amazing. I really want to share this experience with you. When this, by the way, the credit for this goes to Kathy Roy, who introduced me to it. When I first heard of it, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But I never thought it's a necessity. When I actually did it, first of all, it reduces your stress a lot. You're going to be a lot calmer when you don't know whose paper it is. And when it's online, it's typed, so you can't even tell from their handwriting. And it makes you more confident about your grading because there's no way that you were influenced by the name of the person. So I really recommend you to give this a try and consider using it. So again, I have the instructions for how to do blind grading on both assignments and quizzes on Moodle. All right, with the due dates and multiple tries. So what I have here is if you use Moodle quizzes, I always give students multiple tries, and if you want to do that, you will need to have multiple versions of this question. This takes time to develop, but once you do develop those multiple versions, you can have random questions and then give them multiple tries. And also, I don't put any due dates on my activities, right? So instead of the due dates, you can have the expected date, which keeps the activity open, but it still shows up on the first page, which is good because when they sign in, they see the activity there and they're going to do it because to them, expected date and due date is pretty much the same. They don't know the difference, but it doesn't close the activity, so they can always do it. All right. So let's do this. On the main course page, I want you to go to the gradebook setup and then go to scales. So go to your course. And on the right panel, you see gradebook setup. So click on the gradebook setup. And once it comes up, click on scales at the very bottom. All right. If you scroll all the way down, click on add a new scale. And here we are going to do some of my emojis. So you can simply copy paste these. You can copy paste the name into the name box. And then you copy paste the scale into the scale box. Notice that there's a comma between them, but it's already in there. So we can just use the document that I sent you. This is number 18. And as a general rule, if you don't know how to do emojis, you can just press on Windows and the semicolon in a Windows or Control Command Space on a Mac. So save that.
Ahmad, are you going to explain what each of the symbols means? Like, what does the recycling one mean?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So this is a substitute to numerical grading. I'm not a big fan of numerical grading. So if you want, you could say that, oh, this is like the highest grade, this is the second highest grade, this is the third highest grade, and so forth. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's out of 5. But when you use this, it's a good point, Cynthia. Thank you. When you use this, you need to explain to students what they are. If you simply say that, oh, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then you just changed the language, but you haven't really made any contribution. You need to give them descriptions that substitute the numerical equivalent. I'm going to show you. I have actually a table in the document there. So once you save your scale, go to your course and go back to the forum. So you have the forum activity. Just click on edit settings. And if you scroll down where it says grade type is rating and it's point, you can change that to scale and you can select the scale that you just created. Okay, so this way, instead of doing 1 to 5, they would have the emoji equivalent. This is a way of being a little bit less judgmental, and also being a little bit more descriptive once you give them the description for what these things are. So you can save and return to the course. We're gonna move on to number 21 in the document, where I have a kind of a rubric for what these things are. So this is about formatting. If you can open a Word document on your computer, open a blank Word document and copy paste the table. So you copy and paste into your Word document. So whenever you have tables or anything that's kind of a fancy text, the best way to do it is to do it in Word. Do all of your editing in Word. If you want to color code this, whatever, do everything that you want in Word. And then you go to Save As one more time. And where it says Save As Type, so I want you to pay attention here. Where it says Save As Type, click on it and choose Web Page. Choose Web Page Filtered. So do that in your Word document. And you can keep the name. It's going to be an HTML file. And it gives you a message. Just click yes. And then open where you saved it. So for me, it was the downloads folder. And you're going to see an HTML file, which is not a Word file. Just right click on it, open with, and click on Notepad. And then simply select everything. So you press Control A or Command A and copy. So copy the whole code. You don't need to, this is ugly. This is HTML, I know, but don't worry about it. This is not, you don't have to worry about any of these things. Just copy the code. And then go back to your Moodle page. And click on Add an Activity or Resource. select the label. So the label has this blue icon. All right. So here I want you guys to come back and see how I'm doing this. You click on this expander. The first button should be an expand. You click on the expand and you should see this icon, which is HTML. So it gives you the HTML drop down also, right? So click on the HTML and simply paste. So you just paste the code. Again, you don't have to worry about anything. Just paste it and then click on the HTML one more time. So give that a try. And for activity completion, for labels in particular, I never include activity completion because a label is basically, it's not an activity really. You could have it and then they just give themselves a check mark, but I don't include that. So you just save that and return to your course and you will have a neat table here. This is much better than taking an image or a screenshot of your table and putting it up on Moodle. So what you could also do is you can have some of these collapse items. If you don't want it to be too long, you can have one of these collapse things. Again, how to do the collapse, I put it in the document. I think it was number 20. So we skip number 20. But if you like to know how to do these collapse ones, it's very simple. It's just a little code that you have to put before and after your content. All right, one last thing, and then we're gonna have Q&A. Sorry guys, I know this can be too much, but I'm trying to get as much as possible across that would boost your course. So the last thing we want to do is doing a badge. Let's go back to let's create a quiz. So if you didn't follow, it's add an activity or resource and click on quiz. And call it whatever, let's say week 1 quiz. We're not gonna worry about these things because these options are actually quite important based on what you're doing. I've explained some of that in the document, but what I want you to put here is the grade to pass. So let's say the grade to pass is 60. So your quiz is out of 100 and you're gonna set that up later. But let's say the grade to pass is 60. And again, these things you can figure them out later. If you scroll down to activity completion, click on show activity as complete when conditions are met. And then click on students must receive a grade to complete this activity. Okay. This is also the expect complete on that I said. Instead of due dates, I always use this portion instead. This makes the activity always open. Unless you are dealing with the high stake summative assessment, then you would want to have a due date and a closing date. But if you're dealing with formative learning, then I would use expect completed. Anyway, save and return to course. So you have a quiz which is empty at this point, but that's okay. We want to do a nice badge, and we are not going to use this thing. We're not going to use Moodle's own badges, which I'm not impressed about. What we're going to do is we're going to create our own badge, right? So click on and add an activity or resource and click the label one more time. So this could be a badge, and what you could say is you have now completed the first module. And then if you want to give them a little bit more encouragement, you can do a little emoji and I don't know, give them a heart or something. So that would be the badge that would show up. You can also put an image in here. So in the document, I have shown you how you can do images. But the thing that's kind of important is this restrict access. So click on restrict access. So you can figure this out based on your own taste. This is really fluff stuff. And the restrict access, click on add restriction and activity completion. So I'm looking at page 26 of the document if you want to refer to it later. So click on activity completion And then the activity that should be done is the quiz, week 1 quiz. And here you have some options here. You can say it should be complete as long as they complete it, they see this little badge or this encouragement, or it must be complete with a pass grade. And something quite important is cross out the I. As a general rule, whenever you use the restrict access, just cross out the I. As I mentioned, some teachers, they kind of clutter the page for students when things kind of show up as grayed out. There are very rare exceptions where you actually want to show something that's grayed out, for instance, just to entice them to do it or to do the conditions. But otherwise, just cross it out, which means they won't see anything unless they actually complete the activity and pass that quiz. So click on save and return to course. So this thing you can see is now grayed out and it has a restriction on it. Once they complete it, then it's going to show up for them. So the way I've done it is, in my course, for instance, I put a little GIF like that and some encouragement. So this is exactly what we did, just with a different image, right? And you make a qualified market economist. So the credit to that also goes to my friend Mark Andre for showing me how to do this. All right. As you can see, there's a lot you can do. It really depends on where you stand in terms of where you're getting into. Again, don't overdose yourself. I tried to include everything in this document, and it took me like 12 hours to make this document. I tried to have screenshots for everything. So take your time and feel free to share it with others. Another thing that I have here is folders. If you're sharing files, don't just dump your files on the Moodle page. Try to have a little bit more organization, so you can have a folder activity where you can have multiple documents is there. Some of you were probably wondering that how come this course is white and clean and doesn't have the bland gray and blue. That's very simple to fix, and that's really the last item, the theme, appearance, and color. Again, I'm not going to go through this with you right now, but you can easily just follow what I have up here. And I have put some resources at the end and my acknowledgements to those who helped me. Also want to say Cameron, Rafael, and Mark, all three of them are Moodle experts, like they are at the administration end of it. One part of being an advanced user of Moodle is to know who to bother for your needs, right? So you can bother all three of them. And of course you can send messages to help desk too. So they're very experienced with both the pedagogy aspect and the technology. Mark is the actual Moodle technician at Dawson. So you might want to, at some point, you probably will run into him for certain needs. You're also more than welcome to contact me. I would be happy to help you with anything, even if you don't know me. At least you attended this session, so that's more than enough for me. So thank you a lot for bearing with me. I know maybe some parts were rushed and you didn't get it. Maybe some parts were confusing or I didn't do it properly. So I apologize. We're going to stop here and we're going to take up questions.
Ahmad, if I can share just the contact for me and Cameron, so teachers can contact us if they need help.
Okay,
so
sure.
This is you can either send an email to us or book an appointment. So we have those. You can book.me. You can see our schedule and then you select the best date and time for an appointment. It's a Zoom appointment, usually. Yeah, so feel free, any questions on Moodle, need anything, any support, we're here to help you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rafael. So Carlos asked questions if you can do Kahoot in Moodle. To the best of my knowledge, no, you cannot embed Kahoot in Moodle. My understanding is that Kahoot is something that runs live. I don't even know if it has any kind of anything that you could put it up there or if you need to do it.
Yeah, you're right. It runs live.
Yeah.
So it goes to another website. You're gonna play run the website inside Moodle.
All right, James.
Yeah, no, there was a question in the chat, and I'm curious about it too. You showed us I think you showed us the open form, and what's the distinction with the form and the open form? Is there a difference between them, or can you explain it? Because I've used form occasionally and without a lot of success, but I was wondering about the open form.
Right, that's an excellent question. Moodle has at least maybe 3 or 4 different forums, and that can be very confusing. as a general rule, I would say go with open forum. Now, there are two main things, there are two main conditions that I have for using the forum. One of them is anonymous posting. I think in the regular forum, it doesn't give you the option for anonymous posting. And then the other one is rating. I don't know if you have ratings in the regular forum or not. The open forum is, based on my understanding, it's the most up-to-date, it's the most updated version, and it has all of the features of the other forums. And it does give you those two options of anonymous posting and peer learning. The forum is amazing, again, for putting something on cruise control and letting students learn from each other. And it works really good when it's anonymous, because for some reason their confidence level is very low. So you need to kind of get rid of that being on the spot.
The thing, if you don't mind, Ahmad, the thing that that I've noticed in other institutions is that very often the students who are like me and talk a lot are really comfortable in class and aren't comfortable automatically on forums, whereas students who are a little more shy or might not be operating in their first language are a lot more comfortable on forums. So it's a really good way to give an affordance for students who are like that.
Thank you. And I put this also in the document. When you get pictures, try to get transparent pictures. They just look nicer. This is again fluff, but try to get transparent pictures. Another thing is that we have some math teachers among us or science teachers. If you teach anything with where is it? If you teach equations, if you teach anything that involves numbers, try using the math type or the text notation. And I put the link for it, how to do the text notation. Again, try not to upload just an image instead of the formula. Sometimes it might be easier, but it's better if you can have an actual formula, which is done with the math type or the text notation. The chemistry also, you can do chemical equations up there for any entry.
Excuse me, when you say tech, you mean LaTeX, right?
It's the equivalent of LaTeX.
Okay.
The one that's embedded in Moodle is called Tech, which is again same family. And the way it starts is just put $2 signs at the beginning and $2 signs at the end, and whatever you put in the middle would be Tech notation. And it's really programming. So if you're familiar with LaTeX, I think it's almost identical. Okay, so that's wonderful. Yeah, and if you teach math, I would say you might want to train your students to use some of these things. They are using computers all the time, so they should be able to know how to insert formulas properly in a way that's professional.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks to all. Thank you again. Sorry, I know it was too much to handle, but you guys survived. And take your time to go through the document whenever you have time. And if you have questions, don't hesitate to contact me.